Good afternoon, Bermuda. This is Michael Weeks, the Minister of National Security. With me is Ms. Michelle Pitcher, the Director of the Bermuda Weather Service, and Mr. Lyndon Raynor of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team. After our 12 p.m. update, we are here now to give the country an update on to where we are and any idea of when the winds will be abated. So I will turn it right over to Ms. Michelle Pitcher to give the BWS update.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, Bermuda. Bermuda remains underneath a hurricane warning because we are still experiencing hurricane conditions. As the eye has completely moved away from the island a few hours ago, we are now back under the strong winds and the few heavier showers around in the area. We expect to remain under a hurricane warning through at least until 3 p.m. this afternoon, and then we will reassess with the intermediate update in consultation with the National Hurricane Center. We may or may not downgrade to a tropical storm warning then. Please pay close attention to watches and warnings as well as the current conditions because, again, we are still in hurricane conditions. We do have some preliminary data now from the passage of Ernesto. Earlier before the eye, we reached a maximum winds at the National Museum of Bermuda of 77 knots sustained with a gust of up to 95 knots. So that's a hurricane category 1 hurricane force winds sustained, and then the gust of 95 knots is actually category 2 force. So it was really windy out there at the museum. Here at the airport, where it's a little closer to the ocean and sea level, we did record maximum sustained winds of 57 knots with a gust of 73 knots. Most of these winds were occurring around 2 a.m. The passage of the eye was approximately from 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. this morning. However, Hurricane Ernesto did slow down a little bit as it was crossing our area, and the eye actually expanded a bit as it was crossing our area. So we were in a bit lighter than expected winds for an extended amount of time. However, as I'm sure everybody noticed, once the eye completely left the area around 10 or 11 a.m., those hurricane conditions came right back. The storm surge at Ferry Reach, what we can measure so far preliminary, was 1.9 feet. And in our rain gauge here at the Weather Service, we got 5.9 inches as of 6 a.m. this morning. We'll have to do an update later this afternoon to see what else we managed to catch in the rain gauge. So now that the eye of Hurricane Ernesto has passed, again, these winds picked up again. And what we've seen in recent hours is the National Museum of Bermuda sustained winds increased back up to 64 knots. That's hurricane force once again. And the maximum gust we saw for there was 77 knots. At the airport, we weren't too far behind them. We recorded a maximum sustained wind of 51 knots so far after the eye with a gust of 62 knots. So again, it's very windy, hurricane conditions out there continuing. Now for some better news. It does look like Hurricane Ernesto will continue to move out of our area. And as long as it continues to move at the current rate of 7 knots, it will clear most of the hurricane force winds out of our area around 3 p.m. But again, that's only if it keeps moving at its current speed. If it slows down a bit, we might be in for a little bit longer of these hurricane conditions. And of course, conversely, if it speeds up, then they'll be gone sooner rather than later. But with Ernesto right on top of us, any changes is going to make a big difference for our local conditions. We're still going to see these strong tropical storm force winds, 50 knots plus, until almost the evening time. So 4 to 5 p.m. is when we're probably going to see them start to finally notably decrease. But then we're still going to have this tropical storm force winds right through till after midnight tonight. So even though conditions might be easing, it's still going to be very windy out there. And we do expect another rain band or two crossing the area later this afternoon. So even though we've already had plenty of rain so far, we still expect a few more inches coming our way with that. So again, Bermuda remains under hurricane warning. We have hurricane conditions still currently occurring across the island. We do expect them to gradually improve throughout the afternoon. I hope everybody is safe and please continue to be so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you for that thorough update, and we appreciate all that you're doing down there for us. I would like to now turn it over to Mr. Lyndon Raynor of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Mitigation Team. Good afternoon, Lyndon.
Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, Bermuda. As Michelle said, we're still in hurricane conditions, so the number one message is people please remain sheltered for your safety and for the safety of our emergency responders. We have received a number of pictures of poles and trees down across the island. Those pictures have now been forwarded to Public Works and the Parks Department and also Belco, and we are now assessing as to what's going to be our approach in returning or getting our teams out onto the roads to start the cleanup process. However, I must stress that, again, we're not going to be rushing this. We're not going to be putting our people in danger. And based on the Bermuda Weather Service's forecast, a decision will be made as to when those vehicles and those personnel can go out. Like everyone else, we're anxious to get back to some normalcy. But again, I must stress, it's not going to be done at the risk of harm to our Belco workers and Public Works and Parks Department personnel. As far as the causeway will still remain closed, though we will be looking to do an inspection on the top surface of the causeway. But unfortunately, until we have been given the all clear by the structural engineers who have to look at the underneath of the causeway will remain closed. Hopefully, the wind and the sea state will cooperate with us to allow that inspection to take place sooner than we anticipate, and that will allow the causeway to be open. As far as any emergency calls or calls for service, I'm happy to report that there's literally been no calls for service for any major incidents or damage to any property. The most calls that we've received over the last 36 hours or so is primary flooding, but we're happy to report that those floodings are not risk. No one's at risk from those floodings. The shelter, Cedar Bridge shelter, still remains open. It's still only housing 11 persons, which is good from our side. So there's no change in my previous report on the shelter. But overall, I think Bermuda has or is surviving this Cat 1 storm. And I have to give credit to persons who heeded the advice of the minister and all the BWS's briefs to, one, prepare your property, and two, to remain sheltered. I know, Minister, we've got some people out on the beaches, so again, we stress to them, this is not the time to be brave. This is not the time to be bravo. Please do not go into the waters. Please return to your homes. We got reports of some business being open, and I think they were lulled into the eye that the storm has passed. But we are asking that those businesses shut down immediately and people return to their homes. Or if you cannot return to your home because of the storm conditions, to shut down your business and stay sheltered in your business. But no business at this time should be open, so that we're not risking people's lives and safety. Yes, so we've had a conversation with Belco. We had a Zoom meeting just recently, about 2 hours ago, and we kind of come up with a strategy as to how we're going to approach this. A lot of it will rely on the wind conditions, and the plan is that as soon as it is safe to do so, teams from Belco, Public Works, RBR will be heading out to the road assessments, road clearance, and to assist Belco in getting to some priority spots, which would be the power stations and substations across the island. And once Belco is satisfied that the substations are in good order, then we should start to see restoration being made.
Thank you, Lyndon, for that comprehensive update. And I think that brings some comfort that we are nearing the end of Hurricane Ernesto. We are not there yet. So Bermuda, we have been very resilient. Historically, we have been on this road before. And once we have given the okay to resume our daily lives, Balco, would be the lead entity in getting us back up and running. And they do an amazing job. So not much longer will we be in an uncomfortable situation. But in the meantime, please continue to shelter in place. There's businesses that have tried to open today. Please not only consider yourself, but others that may try to leave their homes because they may fear that they could come out. Now's not the time. It's nearing an end. And hopefully by 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon, we'll be able to give a more definitive time as to how soon our island can get back to normal. So Bermuda, continue to work together. There's good news when I hear that there's no emergencies being reported at this time. So let's continue to look out for each other, shelter in place, and hopefully we are closer to the end of this Hurricane Ernesto. Thank you and stay safe, everyone.